NBT Live. Had some thoughts, wanted to unpack. We as corporate trainers often get a request from our stakeholders, hey, can I participate in the session? Or, hey, you should include leadership in these sessions. Is that a good idea? Yes, no, maybe. Should we include them? Should we not include them? Can it be valuable? Can it not be valuable? On the surface, of course, the answer is yes, but there's a lot more to it. So we're going to do a little point counterpoint session here. What are the pros and cons? And then at the end, I'll share my top tips of how to set those leaders up for success, how to set your session up for success. So we're going to unpack all of that. Should you include your stakeholders? Point counterpoint. That's all we're gonna unpack all that. I'm gonna unpack all that right now. Hopefully everybody's doing well here on a Wednesday morning. If you're out there in NBT Nation and you're joining me, be sure to drop me a chat. Let me know how things are going in your part of the world. Have you ever sat through a boring corporate training? Have you ever had a leader join the training only to disrupt it, to knock things off course, to be more of a disruption than a help? These are the things that leave me a chat. Let me know how they go. So, including stakeholders in corporate training. Get this request a lot, and it happens usually in one of two ways. Either we, as the trainer, get the tap on the shoulder, and a leader says, hey, you should include me, or you should include these other leaders. Here's why it's going to be amazing. The other way it typically happens is we as trainers recognize, hey, I should go include this senior level or this leadership person in my session. It would be helpful because of XYZ reason. And then we go and invite them in. So whether we're voluntold, or we volunteer to include those leaders, they oftentimes end up in our sessions. So what does that look like? What does that sound like? What is the point counterpoint? That's today's NBT Live, little random Wednesday pop-up live. Don't forget, before I dive in too far, to visit noboringtraining.com, where we have all sorts of free training resources. This is aimed at leaders who want to get a better outcome from their training. They want to move the business forwards. They want to build the foundations of their businesses and execute on strategy through effective training. So noboringtraining.com has a bunch of tools and resources for that. And it's obviously also for those doing corporate training. How do you plan, build, and deliver training that gets results, not yawns? So there you go, NBT Nation. Let's dive in. Stakeholders. Point counterpoint. Well, the first thing that usually comes up is, well, we need to have leaders in the room during training because they have experience they can share. They can add an interesting context to the session. They can add their valuable experiences to the mix. And whether that be they look in the past, they're looking forwards, they can bring a lot to the table. So let's do point counterpoint. We'll go with a counterpoint, why that's a horrible idea, or why that could go off the rails, how that could derail the training. Let's go with the counterpoint first. That's true. They can bring their experience to the table. Yes, it's true. They can talk about that one time 10 years ago when this thing happened. Yes, it's true. They can talk about how things are really actually happening. All true. The counterpoint against including a stakeholder to share their experiences is, are you looking backwards if it's a past experience? I mean, at the end of the day, who cares what happened 15 years ago if it's not relevant to the topic you're learning today? Who cares about how things used to be when you're trying to do a training session that's changing everybody to look forwards? Who cares about, this one time in 1984? Who cares? That context isn't valuable or relevant anymore. It's current experience. How can that be disruptive? If you're trying to focus people on learning some very specific skill or understand some very specific point, and your leader comes in and they are just sort of up here talking about this big picture strategic thing, and they're talking about their experiences of what they see, it can distract you from the point or the skill or the thing that you're trying to learn in the here or now. So even though, yeah, they got this great experience, they got this great context, they can really talk about what's really happening. Yeah, they're talking about what's really happening at their level, not at the level of the people that are in the room learning, and certainly not on point for the skill or topic or the thing that somebody's learning. So the counterpoint for experience is, yeah, but their experience is through a very specific lens, and that lens may not be relevant to what's actually going to help people learn. Now, the point for including stakeholders and leaders in the training is they absolutely positively do have great experiences. They have a broad range of experiences. They see stuff day in and day out that we as trainers maybe don't have access to. They have maybe updated or current experiences, examples, anecdotes that they could use. They probably are going to have something that they can share that just happened today. Actually, just this morning, this thing happened, and it's totally relevant to what you're learning right now. They can talk about their experiences at a deeper level that help make whatever's being taught more interesting and effective. They can talk about, hey, you're doing this thing, you're learning this thing here. Here's the impact that that has on this thing over here that I deal with in my leadership role. So they can tie the pieces together. So, absolutely, point counterpoint, when you have the experiences of your leaders and your stakeholders, that absolutely can make the training more valuable. You just got to be careful that you're not looking backwards and you're not talking about things at a leadership level that are not relevant to what people are actually learning. All right. Another reason why leaders and stakeholders either ask to be involved in training or we would go and invite them into training is because they have vision across the organization or across the department, across the team, across different locations that could be interesting and effective and help move the learning forwards, whether you're learning skills, information, whatever. And that vision, it's sort of like experience. It's they have this access to things that are happening behind the scenes, new things coming down the pike, new initiatives, new challenges, new market conditions, new organizational changes and shifts. They have that vision oftentimes, and that can be really valuable. So let's do a little point counterpoint of why that could be helpful or why it may not. A little creator fuel to keep us going here. Why can that? Well, let's do the counterpoint. That's true. Those stakeholders absolutely do have visibility to all of that information. They do have visibility to changes or initiatives or market conditions or challenges. That usually plays out in one of two ways. Number one, it takes the topic off track. You're trying to learn some very particular thing in your session, and they're talking about this new big picture initiative that's coming down the pike. And now all of a sudden, everybody in the room's like, yeah, well, what about that? What about that big picture initiative? And they got 1,000 questions that the stakeholder isn't really ready to answer. And now you, as the trainer, you're trying to pull everybody back on track, and it can be very disruptive. Yeah, so that part of the disruption is they have vision to things that are really not relevant. Number two, oftentimes when the people in the room are trying to learn some very particular thing, and the stakeholder is talking about this big picture vision across the organization and how the teams interact and this and that, and the person in the room says, I'm I've got a question about X or I have a question about Y. The leader will either not want to talk about X or Y, or they're not prepared to talk about X or Y, or they have an answer that's very quick and somewhat dismissive of whatever X and Y is all about. And that serves to shut that person who asked the question down. So even though the person is asking about this vision across the organization thing that the shareholder is there to talk about, they get shut down. And now, guess what? You, as the trainer, have to re engage them. You have to now spend more energy bringing that participant back into the discussion. And depending on the skill level, the tact level of that leader, they may shut the person down so hard that you can't bring them back. And now you have somebody in the room who's shut down. Well, how the heck is that going to help them learn? So you got to be very careful. That's the counterpoint. Now, what's the point for bringing the stakeholder and the leader in because they have vision across the organization? Well, I mean, it's obvious. I said it kind of in the opening there. Yeah, they can give the context. They can paint the picture of what's happening at the team level, across different departments, across the location, the facility. They have maybe access to information across the entire organization. And that can help take whatever specific thing you're teaching and have it have a much broader context, a much broader, much richer, much more dynamic experience, much more context or framework to work in. Instead of we're just learning this one little specific thing in isolation, you're learning this specific thing, but it ties to the rest of the organization because of X, Y, and Z. Now, as a trainer, we should be figuring that out too on the front end so that we can paint that picture. But having an actual leader or stakeholder in the room who can paint that picture alongside us, oh boy, that just makes the training that much more interesting. So a little point counterpoint there. You got to be careful. Pick the right leader, pick the right person for sure. All right. Point counterpoint. Why do you include leaders and stakeholders in the training? Strategy. The leader, the stakeholder, especially if they're in a more senior role, they understand and have access to the overarching strategy that's being tried to be employed. And we as trainers know that if you can connect daily work, daily tasks, daily knowledge, daily procedures and processes to the bigger picture strategy and how it makes the company more healthy and how it helps the customers and how it ties to where we're going 1 year, 2 years, 10 years down the road, we know that just makes the training way more interesting. And now you have somebody in the room that can help you execute on that. So let's do point counterpoint. We'll start with the point. Well, like I'm saying, of course, they can paint that picture very clearly. They can talk about, hey, here's where we're trying to get 6 months from now or 6 years from now. Here's the conditions we're trying to build now to prepare us for down the road. Here's this challenge we see in the marketplace, and we're doing X, Y, and Z now to get us ready for that. And part of what you're learning today fits into X, Y, or Z. So paying attention now makes sense. They can paint the vision of where we're trying to go tomorrow so that you and that stakeholder can work together to bring your audience into that as a partnership. Hey, everybody, we're going that way. And now your training participants are trying to go that way. And now they want to pay attention to the thing you're teaching them now so that they can go that way and get to that place. It broadens the horizon beyond just we're here for 30 minutes to learn this thing to, yeah, we're here for 30 minutes to learn this thing, and it's going to have a huge payoff for me, the team, the department, the group, the company, the customer. It's, yeah, I'm here for 30 minutes to learn a thing, but man, it's going to be so great down the road. So there's a little point counterpoint for the point for why you include stakeholders and leaders to talk about the strategy during your sessions. Well, what's the counterpoint? If you're learning some very specific little thing, I'm not sure you really need to know about what the company as a whole is trying to do 10 years from now. You need to learn the little thing. And yes, it's nice to have a connection to the overarching strategy. But if you have a certified no boring trainer running the session, they're naturally going to do that anyway. You don't necessarily need the leader or the stakeholder there to help you do that. If you're just learning this very basic level skill or task or what have you, you don't need to disrupt everything by having more stakeholders to invite, and now you got to worry about their calendar and are they available, and you got to prep them, and you got to explain what it is that you're there to do, and you're just adding totally unnecessary complexity to talk about something that the trainer absolutely positively is fully qualified to talk about. We as certified no boring trainers, we're always connecting day-to-day tasks to strategy. I don't necessarily need somebody there to hold my hand to help me to do it. And especially not when that person is making it more complicated, slowing everything down, and the thing they're bringing to the table really isn't helping my audience learn. So, little point counterpoint there. Having them in the room to talk about strategy. Another reason why either we're asked to include leaders into our training or operations, or we want to naturally go include them, is that it's a chance to meet the leadership team or meet leaders in general. It's a chance for those leaders to learn the people or be introduced or spend time with people through the vehicle of training. It's just an easy way, especially for a really senior leader, a really busy leader. Now you got a training room with 15, 20 people in it. Hey, I can go meet them right now. And that's super convenient. So, little point counterpoint. Should you include leaders, stakeholders in your training sessions, because it's a great way to learn the team and the team to learn the leaders? Well, let's go with the counterpoint first. Yeah, sure, it's a great way for that to take place. Now, again, you're adding a lot of complexity to what might be a very straightforward training workshop or program or session. Now you got to coordinate schedules. You got to do all the prep work on the front end. You got to brief the leader to prepare them for success, all so that the leader can come down and say, hey, everybody. I mean, that's a heck of a lot of extra work just to make it easy for somebody to come down and say hi. I mean, I don't know that the juice is really worth the squeeze there. The other challenge to including leaders and stakeholders during training as a vehicle to meet the team is the team is there to learn something. They're there to learn and practice whatever. Now, the leader's lens or view of that person is whatever they see while that person's trying to learn. So that person might be asking clarifying questions. They might be stumbling to sort of practice skills. They might be not quite connecting the dots yet. And you're just trying to have an open discussion to help them, or a guided Socratic discussion to help them get to where they need to be to learn. And that person's trying to figure it out and pull all this stuff together. And now you got a senior leader that's sitting there going, well, this person doesn't know anything. Well, yeah, no kidding, they don't know anything. That's why they're being trained. That's the point, is they don't know something and they're trying to learn it. And now you're making opinions about that person based on what you're observing while they're learning. And I don't know that that's really fair to the individuals in the room. The third counterpoint against having them there as a vehicle to meet the team and meet the leader is, depending on what they're there to do in the session, the participants, you don't want having the leader there is going to prevent them from doing the thing. In other words, having the leader there may not they may not want to be vulnerable in front of that senior leader. They may not want to do the role play in front of the senior leader. They may not want to struggle through practicing doing whatever while the CEO's in the room looking at them. And now you as the trainer are not getting the chance to see Now you as the trainer are not getting this safe environment that you've worked so hard to build. You've tried to build an environment of trust where people feel vulnerable, and now the VP of whatever is sitting there, and you're going to ask the audience to open up and share their darkest and deepest mistake they've ever made in a corporate setting. It quashes the openness in the room. So that's the counterpoint of including leaders and stakeholders in your training as a way to meet the team. There's a lot of downside, but there is some real upside. What's the point of doing it? Well, it's a chance for people to meet each other for sure. As I said in kind of the opening there, senior leaders are busy, busy people. Mad respect. They're going 1,000 miles an hour, and they're dealing with challenges that we don't even know about or recognize. And they're worrying about the problems of 5 years and 10 years down the road. And that's a heavy burden. So if you can lighten that burden a little bit by helping create some connection between them and their team and making it easy for them to meet and spend time with the team, why wouldn't you do that as a trainer? It's a great way to lighten the load of your leaders and help the team meet and know and understand those leaders. It's a chance for your participants to see those leaders in a different way. They're not in leadership mode necessarily. They'll stay in leadership mode, but they'll see the leader through the context of whatever they're learning. It's also a chance for, if you're able to create a safe environment and you're able to prepare your stakeholders and leaders to come in and foster this and work within the safe environment. Now your participants are building trust and psychological safety with your leadership team. And that's huge. That's a massive thing. So having them in the room is a great way to build trust, build psychological safety, build connection. They're able to see, the leaders are able to see the people learning and growing and start to get a little bit of different perspective on them. And the participants are able to see the leaders and maybe establish a little bit of relationship there. At bare minimum, if they see the stakeholders and leaders enough to build comfort to say hi in the hallway later on, and when they pass the leader in the hallway, and like, oh, hey, by the way, could I ask you a question real quick? Now you've built that pathway to senior leaders, because most senior leaders don't want to sit in ivory towers. They don't want to sit in their office closed off from the rest of the world. They want to have the interaction with the team. And this is a small way to make that easier for your leaders. So it's worthwhile to do. So there you have it. Experience, vision across the organization, strategy, and introductions to leadership and the team. 4 common reasons why stakeholders either want to be included or we want to include them. And there's a little bit of point and counterpoint of how it could work really, really well or how it could totally fly off the rails. And hopefully this is painting a picture of what you need to do a little bit as a certified no boring trainer to set that up for success. And that's what we're going to switch to now. Top tips. NBT top tips on how to make, including a senior leader, a stakeholder, or a leader of any sort, how to include them and set that up for success. All right. How are we doing here? Doing great. Hopefully, everybody is having a great Wednesday morning here on this pop-up live. And as I encouraged you, please visit noboringtraining.com. Lots of free tools and resources, both for leaders and trainers alike. All right. How do you set stakeholders and leaders up for success when you're including them in a training session? Number one, you got to pick the right leader. If they're not good in front of people, if they're not good talking to people, if they're not good following your lead, if they're not good naturally able to interact in a training type environment, that's going to be a challenge. It happened a long time ago, but I've had leaders come in the room and literally put their head down and just read from a script, and they literally read the thing. I mean, okay. But I mean, you can't have a normal human to human connection or conversation. You can't think extemporaneously. You can't respond on the fly. I mean, what a horrible look for a leader to just have a set of notes that you literally put your head down and read from as opposed to interact. That's awful. I've had some leaders come in and they're just so pie in the sky and they're so just pie. They're on a whole nother level that fighting to make that relevant to what we were learning today was just a tremendous amount of energy. So think about the type of leader that you have. Think about their pros and their cons, their strengths, their weaknesses, and how you could magnify the strengths and bringing the right leader in at the right time for the right session. That leader who struggles just to interact with other people and think on the fly, you do not want them in the room interacting while your group is trying to learn skills and you're talking through things and you're trying to have an open discussion. If you're trying to have an open discussion and you invite that leader in, oh my gosh, they're going to shut it down. They're going to try to dictate to everybody. They're going to start lecturing people, or they're just not going to know what to do and have nothing to add because they don't have their prepared speech to read. So think about who is the right leader for the right session and how do I set them up for success by picking the right person for the right session. That's number one. Number two, having a structure in place. Again, your job is to teach people skills and knowledge so that they can perform better in their job role and you can move the business forwards. That's what you're there to do. And if you don't have a clear structure of how that's going to happen in your given session, that leader, that stakeholder is going to come in and they're going to try to suddenly start taking over. And depending on the leader, if they're a real, hard charging type leader, it can be really hard to pull them back onto track if you don't have a clearly defined roadmap and structure. Now, don't hear me wrong on that. Don't get it twisted. Sometimes I've had leaders come in and the whole session just pivots over this way, but it was for something good. It was it was a valuable pivot in the moment, and I allowed it to happen because it was valuable and I still got to what I was trying to accomplish. But I've had other leaders come in and try to take over, and it's been a complete nightmare. So have structure in place. Have a roadmap. What is the agenda for the session? What is the outcome you're trying to achieve? What are the key takeaways? What's the time length? Who's going to be in the room? Paint that, have that structure defined for yourself first, your audience second, and your stakeholders, leaders third. Roles and responsibilities. That's another thing that you got to get sorted. When you invite a leader or stakeholder into your training session, what are they there to do? Prep them on that. Explain, I've invited you in, and here is what I would like you to do. We're going to co-present. I'm going to talk about XYZ. I would like you to talk about ABC. Or maybe you just want them to come in and commentate on what you're discussing. Hey, thank you for joining the session. I am the lead instructor. We're going to talk about X, Y, and Z. And when we get to Y, I would like you to share your experiences about why. Or I would like you to have some prepared examples of how when we didn't do why, it was a huge nightmare and it caused a disruption to the customer and the organization and it was really expensive. Or if you just want them in the room for a quick hello, explain that to them. Hey, your role here is just to come in the room, 5-10 minutes, say hello, talk a little bit about your personal background, talk about what you do here at the organization, what you enjoy about the organization, personal life, whatever. roles and responsibilities. So make sure you're picking the right leader or stakeholder for the right session. Make sure that you have a clear structure. Make sure you define those roles and responsibilities. Make sure you prepare that leader. Don't just say, hey, can you pop into a training session on Tuesday for an hour and give them no guidance on what to expect. It kind of goes back to the structure piece, but don't just send them an email, a 1,000 word email, and go, well, I gave them the structure. You got to really brief them. You got to prepare them. You got to touch base with them, a week out from the session, and maybe 2 weeks or a couple days out from the session, and then maybe the morning of the session, depending on what you're doing. You got to really go through things. Maybe you're doing a nationwide all hands meeting of some sort, like a sales kickoff or a product launch, and you've brought everybody to a hotel conference room or something. If you don't prepare those senior leaders and you just shove them up on stage with a microphone, oh my goodness, that's going to go all sorts of wrong. You got to prepare the leaders and make it easy for the stakeholder and the leader to know and understand what they're doing. Now, of course, they might have a vote in the matter along the way. And that's fine. That's well within their rights and their purviews, as long as it's legal, ethical, and moral, right? They might want to kind of, but if you pick the right person, you have a structure, you clearly define the roles and responsibilities, and you prep them ahead of time. Now you're making their life easy and you're setting them up for success. Now they can come in and use their experience. Now they can come in and talk about this thing we did in the past or this thing we're trying to do right now. And it can make your training even better. And they can share their vision across the organization. And then, of course, they can bring in the right bit of knowledge about strategy and tie all that together. And they could, really bond with the team and understand the team. And the team could get a little snapshot or insight into them. All that can happen because you picked the right person, you had a good structure, you defined roles and responsibilities, you prepped them appropriately, you had a good partnership. Hey, this is what I'm looking to accomplish. Can you help me with this or that? Most leaders, once you start saying, hey, this is what I need from you, this is what would be helpful, yeah, absolutely. And then you might even get into a little bit of brainstorming. You can evolve the thing, you can make it better, you can collaborate, you can grow it a little bit. And then the last top tip, when you're in the session itself, you are in charge of that session. If you're the corporate trainer, even though the CEO's in the room, it's your session. Do not cede control of your session to the CEO or that hard charging vice president or that director or that other stakeholder who just wants to kind of, You're a certified no boring trainer. That is your session. Now, having said that, it doesn't mean you don't pivot like I talked about before. It doesn't mean you don't maybe let something go down a different pathway because it is productive, or maybe something organically happens, which is better than the training material that you had prepared, or it improves the training material that you had prepared. You might give that some leash and let it go. And now you're kind of pivoting. You don't want to arm wrestle in public with the stakeholder or the leader or what have you. You don't want to have a battle royale with them. That's why you do all the prep work on the front end, the top tips I talked about. You don't want to battle with them. But at the same time, you got to pivot. You got to flex. You got to kind of go with the flow as long as it's getting you closer to your session objective. At the same time, though, you do not want to secede or give away your control of the room. If they have a very strong personality, if they don't pay attention to any of the prep work or the guidance you gave them, if they start improvising and now all of a sudden your session is, we're going off this way, you got to reel that joker back in. You got to, let's get that back. Let's get that back on track. I've cut CEOs off before. It's uncomfortable. You have to be very respectful. You have to be polite when you do it. But if you're trying to go over here to achieve an objective and they're wanting to go over here and it's really not benefiting the session objective, guess what? That's my session. It's not your session. Period. because I'm responsible to help them learn this thing. And I'm not going to let you distract you. I don't care how many stripes you have on your stripes you have on your jacket. I'm accountable. I'm responsible. And I'm not going to let you derail us, period. Full stop. I don't care if it offends you or it pokes your ego. My job is to help those people get better at this skill, at this thing, to make your company better and work at a higher level. I'm not going to let you derail that. So you got to maintain control of the session, but be willing to pivot and flex just like you would normally. You're willing to pivot and flex for the needs of the audience, right? No different. You should be ready to pivot and flex based on the leader or the shareholder, a stakeholder that's in the room. If something organic comes up, somebody asks a question and now you're getting off topic, but that's a good beneficial thing. Of course, you're going to let that go and you're going to partner and kind of play off that stakeholder. And you want it to be this fun, collaborative, respectful, real time partnership. They're there to help you. They're there to help the thing get better. So take the help. Just don't hand over the keys to the car. You're still the driver. So there you have it, NBT Nation. Including stakeholders, including leaders. Should you do it? Should you not do it? We talked about utilizing their experience, their vision, their knowledge of strategy, and the ability to meet the team as common reasons to bring those individuals into your training sessions. We did a little bit of point-counterpoint of why that can be really good or not so great, to set the stage then for top tips on how to make it work better, how to make it far more effective. What did I miss? What would you include? Leave me some comments down below. At the end of the day, including your shareholders and leaders into your training sessions is a incredibly useful skill set, and a certified no boring trainer should have no problem bringing and inviting those individuals in. Yeah, it's a little bit more work. Yeah, it's frustrating because their schedules never seem to line up with the training schedule. Yeah, it's a pain in the butt to have to do extra work to prep them and get them ready. Yeah, it can be a little frustrating when you have to kind of pull them back in during a session, of course. But the benefits far, far, far outweigh the downside. As long as you make it easy for them, you set them up for success, you help them understand what you're there to accomplish, you help them to understand their roles and responsibilities, you prep them, you have a good solid structure for the session, and then you maintain control of the session, and you're the conductor that then lets them shine and brings them in at the right point of the arrangement. You bring them in at the right moment in time. And now it's a beautiful thing. So on average, yes, you get that tap on the shoulder. Hey, I want to include a shareholder or a stakeholder or a leader. Or you're thinking, should I, shouldn't I? More often than not, the answer is, yeah, you probably should. So there you have it, NBT Nation. Thanks for joining me here on this Wednesday morning pop-up live. Fun time here in Mississippi, USA. Kid Unit 1 graduating from high school this week. So that's kind of exciting. And lots of other fun stuff happening from on the No Boring Training NBT front. Lots to come there. Hope everybody